Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast with your host, Tracy Hayes. Best of the best, without a doubt, today on the show. Tens of millions in production just in the last 12 months. A nice balance of listing and buyer side deals, so she has mastered both. She has an undergraduate degree in psychology and sociology, if I got that right. A master's in social work. Yes. From the University of Southern California. She is recognized by the Jacksonville Producers Magazine as a top agent in Northeast Florida. I love her videos she's been doing recently on social media, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Let's welcome this very successful agent. Let's see what makes her tick. Erica Jolles of Round Table Realty. Welcome to the show. And I want to make sure I pronounce your last name correctly.
It's Jolles.
Jolles.
Yes.
Jolles. You really accent the O.
Yep.
Erica Jolles to the show. Sorry
I tell
about
people
that.
it's like without a jaw. Jawless.
Jawless.
Yep.
Okay. I was going to ask you that before. I always ask that pre-show when you have those names that could go either way. But I appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Tink you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Didn't have to travel far.
Nope.
Just 10 feet above your head, down from below.
Yes.
You often come in the office, or you like to work from home a lot?
It's funny. It depends upon what's going on. When I'm really busy, I tend not to come in the office as much. But when things are a little quiet or I'm getting a little stressed because things are quiet, I come in the office because there's a lot of energy down there, and just being around the people there, it invigorates me and it gets me. I can get complacent. I've been doing this a long time.
Yes.
So being around other people, seeing what they're doing, sometimes will give me the motivation I need to start to dig in again.
That brings up something, using the word complacent, and you've been doing this for about 16 years, if I recall.
Almost over 16 years, yeah.
I think I entered the business in September of 2005, so I'm a couple weeks from my 17th anniversary in the business. But yeah, you can become complacent, and when I just get so disheartened sometimes when especially these very new loan officers, guys with sometimes just months to just a couple of years, and they're hiding at home, or they come in late, and I'm like, do you understand the potential of what you're doing? And at some point you're going to hit like right now it's a little tougher. Right. So are you going to fall out because you didn't put the work in last spring? Right. You don't know. It's feast or famine. So come in and put a hard day working. Right. And like you said, the energy, just talking shop. Yep.
But I will say, and it's funny, my broker Howard Flash, and he and I joke around that I'm the female version of him. When I've worked really hard, so I'm not going to say luck, but I've worked hard to get to where I'm at. Right. And when things are moving along and you're having closings, sometimes, you know what? I don't need to follow up. I don't need to touch my people. And I forget about it. And then every January, in fact, that's a whole story in and of itself. Every January, I freak out because I have nothing going on. And every January, Howard and my assistant, who's my mom,
stick a fork in you.
They remind me, they're like, Erica, it's January. You're like this every single year. You need to chill out. Right. So, and that's when I started to kick things into gear. But I'm trying to get better. I'm definitely trying to be better about keeping in touch with my past clients, one way or the other.
Well, what I've seen develop, especially in the last few years, is there's services out there that can help you a lot of times with those things, and you have to come to a realization, hey, I'm not reaching out to my past clients. Okay, why don't I just pay a virtual assistant just to call them and say hi? Because if I'm not doing them, at least somebody's doing it for me. Have you looked at things like?
So
it's a tough reach, I know.
Yeah. I'm very, very possessive of, and maybe one might call it control, but I like to think of it possessive. And this is one of the reasons why I wouldn't do a team, is because if they're my people, they're my people. And I don't want somebody they don't know calling them. My mom, who's my assistant, she's actually out in California.
Oh, it's your mom.
Yeah, she was a realtor for 30-something years, and now she has retired. So we have a system in place where, once I've closed, after 4 weeks, they get something from me, an email. At the 6-month mark, they get a gift from me. At the 1-year mark, they get something from me in the mail. At the 15-month mark, they get something. Right. And then every year in November, I send all my clients a copy of their settlement statement. So that way, when it comes time to file for their taxes. Homestead, exactly. Right. So I have a system, but I don't
your mom she tracks that.
She tracks that.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And she doesn't, everything's my name. So, and the phone calls are for me, and I I'm getting better. I'm trying to get better.
I would have Mom make those phone calls.
Yeah.
She might be better.
She's really good. Whenever I get my leads and they come in and she answers the phone, I will say 8 out of 10 times she turns a lead into something.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, she's
That's
really
awesome.
good.
All right. So get back on track of the show. Where are you from?
I am from Southern California. Specifically, I grew up in Agora and moved here from Simi Valley.
Pronounce that again.
Agora.
Agora?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of, depending upon when you live there, newcomers call it Agora Hills.
Okay.
Because we were unincorporated. It was the country. I mean, there was like, it was probably like what Julington Creek Plantation was to people who've lived here their whole lives.
Right.
But at the grocery store, there were places to hitch your horses up to.
Wow.
Now it's where all Hollywood lives to stay out of Hollywood. It's
Yeah.
about 25 minutes inland of Malibu and an hour south of Santa Barbara. It was a great place to grow up.
Oh, so I was wondering how because one of my questions you had on the Ronald Reagan, I called the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library,
Right?
But obviously, because that wasn't that far away.
Correct. But that came to be. So I went to grad school at USC, and then I just like I tell my kids, life is about who you know, and so you need to be nice to everybody you meet because you never know when you might meet them again or you might need to call upon them.
Yep.
So I was given a position at USC. I didn't ever want to practice real social work. I wanted to be a college counselor of sorts. So this woman who I was put in touch with through somebody I know helped me get a job at USC as an undergraduate admission counselor. Mm-hmm. And then I was commuting 100 miles round trip on the train in Los Angeles. I knew how to use the subways. Most people don't know how to do that. I even took a city bus, one and done. That's it. And so after having been there for 3 years, this same woman who helped me get my job at SC had since moved to the Reagan Library, was looking for somebody who had the knowledge to use an unusual kind of computer program and event planning, and it was 3 miles from home. So she hired me, and I was there for 5 years and was part of a team that helped raise $32 million for the Reagan Presidential Library Foundation. We helped bring Air Force One, or President Reagan's Air Force One. It was retired.
Right.
We built a museum for it. It was a big deal. I learned more in those 5 years than I learned in any of my years of school.
That when I originally worked for Loan Depot, because this is my second time around, they flew me because their home office is in California, and I was there for 2 weeks. But you kind of had the weekend off in the middle, so I drove up to the library.
Oh wow!
And I because I was born in '70, so when I came to old enough to realize what the first presidential election. I remember I think I was a sophomore in high school, and they were like, "Oh, you got to stay up and watch the whole thing." Well, that was the one where he landslided and was basically over by 8:00 Eastern time.
Right.
And but man, I was in tears.
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a
Did you see the Air Force One?
Saw the Air Force One, walked through it, and actually I brought my the following year I went back out. And for a couple weeks, I worked 1 week while my wife and kids toured around. And the second week, we toured some more and went north, and I took them to the library. So I've been there twice. Okay. But man, when I walk through, so I'm by myself, and they take you through the path of the thing, and that last part, and eventually his passing, and they got the videos on the wall. Dude, I'm crying.
Yeah,
I am crying. It was such a well done, emotional. Just the way he spoke, and I had to touch on that. When I saw that, I was like, "That is awesome," because I just had to say that.
It's a pretty special place. So I was there when Air Force One took its final flight. I was there when they took it apart.
Oh wow!
They at 5 a.m. they had to take it down the highway, up what we call the Shining City on the hill, up the hill, and then put it back together again. Yeah. So it was a tremendous. And yes, it's a rather emotional experience, and I will tell you politically, I didn't care about politics. It was a job 3 miles from my house. Yeah. In California. That's all I cared about.
If anyone has ever, they have Air Force One, the way it's positioned, you can describe it, and it's facing this whole glass. So when you're standing there, it makes it look like it's flying over.
It's taking off.
It's over the hills of California there, the rolling. It's just so well done. The whole place was well done. Okay, so you're there.
Yep.
And I see you had your first brokerage on LinkedIn as Magnolia Properties. Is that here or?
No, that was here.
Okay, so what brings you to?
So we moved here. So my husband, I met him. He was in the Marine Corps. He is from Maryland. He hated California, but we stayed out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had our second child. And at that time, my job was it was pretty demanding. You know, I was answering in some respects directly to Mrs. Reagan.
Oh, wow.
I had a boss who did not have children. And so the whole work family thing didn't jive for her.
Was she a political appointee at one time? One of these people totally dedicated to the
No,
cause?
no, but there are those people. And I used to tease people, I used to like joke around that these people that like worked in the administration, how they're always talking about it. But now that I work there, like I get why you talk about it. It is definitely, if you're at a cocktail party, it's much more exciting to talk about that than real estate. I'll tell you that. So my husband was a CPA, and we just decided it was time to leave California. So I actually sent his resume out, and he had a couple opportunities, the best one being here. He interviewed in May, and then in August of 2005, we were here. And I had gone from working full-time plus, having 2 kids in daycare where their diapers are being changed, they're being fed, they're being taken care of somebody else, and living in a community that I had grown up in. And I suddenly moved here, and I was suddenly taking care of 2 kids, changing diapers, feeding them. And I knew nobody.
Right.
And I am an ambitious person, and I was going crazy.
Right.
I'm like, this is not for me. And so I met a woman who had said that she was looking for an assistant. She was a realtor, maybe 10 hours a week. And I just wanted, honestly, to make enough money to have a cleaning lady. Right. That was really it. And so I became her assistant. I thought this would be easy. You know, my mom's a realtor. I know something. I was her assistant. I was getting done what should have been 10 hours done in 2 hours. And I realized I'm too smart to be someone's assistant. Mm-hmm. So then I went and got my license. And then that was March of 2006. And I will just say every year it's gotten better since then.
Wow. So even during the, because you started at the same time as CC Underwood, Christina Welch. Mm-hmm. These are all great real estate agents in the region. I could name off some others that have been on the show, started at a similar time.
Yep.
And then, so what do you do when you hit that? You probably start feeling it in 2007, but definitely by 2008 and 2009, you said you kept moving forward. What were some of the things like, oh my God, because it's really the first downturn.
Right.
You get slapped in the face with it. And it's like, what? Okay, what do you do?
Well, first of all, I should also back up and say that when I first started the first 4 years, the woman who I became her assistant, we became partners.
Okay.
And I was working because I wanted to be working. And I had come from working, I was asking people for $100,000 gifts, making donations. So, the market didn't affect me. In some ways, I didn't know anything different. It was just, you just work and you work through it, and you have to work hard. I mean, I love when people say they want to get into real estate because it's easy money. And I'm like, show me the easy part. Yeah. So I will say that time period, I learned so much. That's how I learned about short sales. Because in the very beginning, before David Heekin, for example, started his whole business where he would take on the short sale and do the negotiating, I remember my first couple of short sale deals, I was the one negotiating with the bank. So I learned a lot. I mean, every experience was a learning experience.
Right.
And I don't know that I was, it wasn't about, obviously it's about the dollar signs, right? We're working hard. We want to see our efforts pay off, but it was just about getting, I don't know. I don't even think of it as being hard.
Well, the opportunities were there.
Right.
You just had to mold to what's going on, and it sounds like you went with the flow.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize. Maybe David mentioned that when I had him on the show, because it's been 10 months or so. It's about last fall, but I didn't realize he actually did. But that makes total sense because his business is slow. From the title side.
Right.
Why not go out and I need to create the business? Right. I need to actually get involved and put the value out there. Mm-hmm. So that was brilliant. But it seems like you just. Hey, okay, here's the next obstacle. It's the next hill I got to climb. Well, it starts with the first step.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it was like I didn't know anything different.
Right.
Because I started off not really knowing how to do real estate because, you think you go to school and what you learn in school means absolutely nothing.
Right.
So I think it's fair to say the first couple of years I was still learning, and then the recession hit and the housing market took a dive. And so then I just had to keep working hard.
Tell us a little bit about, because you just mentioned a few minutes ago, you were calling on people to make, 6-figure donations to the library. How did you take that experience overall from, 5 years of your post college life, and some of those things you learned, or dealing with people on the phone, and immediately put it into your real estate play?
So that's a really interesting question, because I tell this to people all the time. So let's back up. Before I worked at the Reagan Library, I was a college admission counselor. So I was planning events nationwide for kids, trying to recruit them to come to USC.
Okay.
Talking to them, listening to what their needs were, trying to educate them on the opportunities, if this was a match, whatever. Then I'm a fundraiser. Again, talking to people, listening to why they love President Reagan, trying to educate them about President Reagan, about the importance of leadership in future generations. And then real estate. So the basic principle you learn when you're getting your master's in social work is you need to start where your clients are. Number one, it's not about where you are. It's not about where their family is. It's about start where your client is.
Right.
So if you think about that principle, and I've applied it to every single one of my careers I've had, it's start where my clients are. Listen to what their needs are. If they tell you that they can spend $500,000 on a house, don't send them $600,000 homes. I'm not there to spend their money.
Right.
So it's always listening to what my clients' needs are, regardless of what my needs are.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And then, trying to, obviously, when it comes to housing, meld husband, wife, partners, sisters, fathers, daughter, whatever, everyone together.
That's a interesting how you brought that in together. The social work in, obviously not everyone's been a social worker or but actually that's a social worker has to get down in the thick of things, in areas that maybe most of us don't even want to go, but you have to find out what's the baseline of these people, where's the foundation, and then you could start influencing them or encouraging them, or whatever it is that your goal is, and trying to do that, and how that works directly with buying a home. That's brilliant.
Well, and you have to ask questions, and not just ask questions, but you have to listen to the answers.
Right.
You can't be formulating your next question while they're telling you their answers.
Yes.
And one of the questions, for example, when I'm working with retired people or people who are empty nesters, for one reason or another, they're relocating here. That's a hard time in life to start meeting people, especially if you're not moving to a 55 and older community.
Yes.
So the question I always ask is, how do you envision you're going to spend your days now that you're retired? And I will tell you 9 out of 10 times that people are like, gosh, I haven't even thought about it. Okay, well, what do you like to do?
Because they've always worked.
Right.
They just are programmed.
Or they've taken care of kids.
Yeah, and they program for that, and all of a sudden that's gone.
That's right. So okay, what do you like to do? Do you think you're going to go to the beach? Are you involved with your church or synagogue? Are you an artist? Do you maybe you want to get involved with continuing ed classes at the university?
Right.
And then, okay, this is what you like to do. Well, how far are you willing to commute?
Right.
And then you just, it's all about asking questions. And the funny thing is, some people would say, oh, well, you're nosy. I'm really not. I do not like small talk, which is one reason I don't go to a lot of realtor events. Because if I'm going to talk to you, I want to get to know you.
Right.
Right? So I want to take that information and help my people, my clients, create a life.
Your relatives from the Northeast?
Yeah. Okay. My parents. I was born in New York, but I've lived.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I was born in New York as well.
Yeah.
And that is the stereotypical New Yorker. We are, and I withhold because I think my wife is from Florida, and she's a little more restrained from, asking those questions. I've said this, I think the last 3 episodes I've been on. We as humans, we deal with the same things just at different times in our lives.
Right.
And whether it's a financial loss or a personal loss, a family member, whatever it is, we all deal with these pains. And when you come to the realization that we've all been down the same path, just you might have done it in California, another guy might have done it in South Carolina. It doesn't matter. It is really the same path. That when you actually start talking a little more, not probing like, hey, why did your kid fail out of school or something like, you're asking questions that are relative to the conversation.
That's right.
And you're letting them know that, hey, I want to find because I'm sure you preface your whole conversation with, let's find you the best house in the right location with all the things that are going to make you happy. Let me and you start asking those questions, and they will talk to you.
Yep. And and in some cases, if one of the spouses, this is another conversation I'll have, is if one of the spouses is working, I will often say to the other spouse, okay, their job is to go to work and make money. Your job is to create a life for your family here. How are we going to do that? What do you want to do with your kids? What are activity? So again, it's the systems approach like social work. So you start where your client is, and then you bring in all of these other pieces, which makes the whole.
Let me throw I'll call it a wrench in your engine, but not really. But because I know this happens all the time, because of the internet and everything. Obviously, a lot of our buyers are on there searching and trying to do as much research as they can. And a lot of the times, I'm sure they come with you, hey, I want to live here. But then you start having this conversation, and it's like, okay, that's not really where you want to live based on what you're telling me.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's important to, again, listen to them and visit that place.
Right.
For example, if they say they want to live at the beach, in Jack's Beach, let's just use that as an example. And we're talking about all these other things. I'll say, great, this is a great opportunity. These are the options you have, but keep in mind, you may be commuting to do X, Y, and Z. Or if you live in Jack's Beach, these other things that you like to do are not going to be at your fingertips.
Right.
So I think it's important that they come to the realization on their own with my guidance and education.
From what you sound like and there needs to be more agents. I think you probably should do some trainings if you don't already do them downstairs at Round Table, because I think a lot of, I hate using a lot. I think there's a good amount of agents that kind of just roll with the punches from their prospective buyers, and the buyer will tell them they want to live in Jack's Beach. Okay, and then they just go to Jack's Beach instead of asking those few other questions, because you may find out, oh, you know what, they actually want to live over here because can I show you one over? And all of a sudden they fall in love with it, and you're like, oh my God, thank you for asking that question. And the fact that they roll with the punches and are afraid to ask some of those questions, and you're not being personal, you're doing your job.
Right.
Your job is to find out really where they want to live. They only know so much. They only know what they know, right? They don't know what they don't know.
That's right. And one of the things I will tell people, especially when I'm working with people new to the area, is there's nothing that I would hate more than they buy a house and they call me a year later because they've met people at work or wherever, and they say, well, why don't we look at this area or this area? So I rather give them the whole overview. It's sort of like someone said to me before I got my first job, with every interview you have, you're that much closer to getting your job. Well, I feel like with every community you look at, you're that much closer to figuring out what's going to work for you.
Right.
So you can't return this. You can't return a house. Yes, you can put it back on the market, but we all know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
And I think, it ties into this whole notion that we have downstairs. Our sort of slogan, our tagline is people before property. So before I even worked with Howard and Keith, that was sort of, it's about the people. I will tell people over and over again, the product I sell are houses, real estate, but I'm in the business of people. And I will just as easily talk somebody out. I went to a listing appointment recently for somebody that I know. They're empty nesters. All of their friends are selling their big houses and moving to apartments or condos on the river, this, that, or the other. Well, this couple lived in a very modest home with a swimming pool in the backyard, and they loved their home. And I said, why are you moving? This is affordable for you. It's right in the location you want to be in. Like, I just don't get it.
Right.
And they're like, thank you.
Yeah.
And they're not. And now they're making changes to their home. I'm like, invest in your home and stay in your home. You love it.
The best in the business, like yourself, I had Paige Wiseman in here a few weeks ago, and she was talking about how she's run to people similar like that, or like, hey, why don't you keep it and rent it out? Let me show you how that will change. Where she could have gotten the sale.
Right.
But she actually showed them how to improve, put themselves in a better financial spot. So one of the questions I actually had on here was, because I know Howard's very proud of his tagline, people before property, and define that and what that means to you.
I mean, I feel like it's putting my people's needs before my paycheck.
Right.
I mean, one of the thing that my mom taught me, that I'll never forget when I first got into this business, is don't count your money until it's in the bank. Right? Because
don't
we all
count your
know,
chickens before they hatch.
That's right. You can go to the closing table, and
that's probably what she did say.
Right? No, she said don't count your money before. Yeah.
All right. I was always the chickens before they hatched.
Nope. And because a deal could fall apart at the closing table.
100%.
And ultimately, if my clients are not happy, they're not going to refer me. Mm-hmm. My most important, I don't know what the word is, but there's nothing more important than my reputation. Right?
Right.
So if I am not putting my clients' needs and people before they, the house first, then I am not doing them justice.
Yeah. And this is a very common theme that comes up, and you were saying that about the dollars, and the realization is, if someone comes in front of you as a real estate, if you're a new real estate agent or a new loan officer, it doesn't, we're paid by the volume, the size of the loan, paid by the purchase price of the house. The person looking for the $500,000 home probably isn't going to turn around and buy a $200,000 home, and vice versa.
Right.
And the reality is, you have to work with the person who's in front of you to get to the next person.
That's right.
in line. And nothing says just because you're working with the $200,000 person that you're going to miss the $500,000, because obviously the volume you're dealing with multiple clients, probably at all different price points at any one time.
And you know what? Let's tie this back to my fundraising days. Your $1,000 donor today could become your $100,000 donor tomorrow.
Yeah.
So my $300,000 buyer today, give them 10 years. They might be buying $1 million home or a $600,000 home or whatever.
Right. And we're probably going to see a lot of it happening already, where these people did buy their house 2 years ago. The pricing on the homes is higher than it's ever been, and they're turning around saying, "Hey, let me take some of this equity, and I can put money down, have this almost the same loan amount." Interest rates are a little higher, but I'm saying they're relatively to move to that. Now they're moving, to that area. Maybe they're going from the west side, to Ponte Vedra. I don't know, whatever it may be, but they're going to be making those moves. Matter of fact, I took an application from a customer, bought a $218,000 home a year ago. He has some nice equity in it. Now they're looking to sell that home, take that equity, and move up to a $400,000 home.
I'd like to know where there was a $218,000 home a year ago.
Well, that was that was definitely on the west side for sure. I can't remember what some of it, but there was. There's somehow they go. Well, there's some townhomes that were. I think they were living in a townhome.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was that Bartram area there. There was. I don't know. They got to be 250 now, but they were hot cakes at 200,000.
Yeah,
they were going as fast as you could list them. But and I use the terminology, you never know what's under the rock that you unturn.
Right.
And that like you said, that $1,000 donor, that $200,000 home buyer, who knows, might have gotten a raise, whatever, and now they're changing income. Maybe they only had one income a year ago, now they have two incomes, and now...
That's right.
And now a kid, and now they're ready to... Yeah,
that's right. You just never know.
Yeah. And you've got to just enter the lottery, turn over the rock, and keep moving, and treat every person like you said. Is that when you start, you're talking about people. To me, the houses sell themselves.
Right.
Someone's going to go in their house and, I'd really like to live here. I love the location. You don't really. It's not like trying to upsell someone in a car or something that. Maybe that's going to push their financial things. If someone walks in, the houses sell themselves.
Right.
But you and your longevity is totally determined on how that transaction how you made them feel through that entire 30, 45, 60 days that you're working with.
And I think honesty. I mean, I'll tell you, this is something else. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow night with these new buyers. They're young. And I'm going to say, look, we're going to go look at houses, and I'm going to point out the pros and cons to you. And you may choose to still move forward with the house, and I'll support you, but I'm not doing my job if I don't point out things, because you're thinking about today and I'm thinking about tomorrow.
Right.
The resale. So if it's on a corner lot with a ton of cars going by, I'm going to tell you, right?
Your kids aren't going to be playing out in the street.
That's right. But you might love it because it's a huge piece of property.
Right.
And that's fine.
Do you find, I always remember when we bought our house here, and it was November of 2008. As rates were dropping, we made the offer. We closed in December of 2008. And I think, how many times did I did we actually visit the property, right? We went over there a couple of times, and you don't really get to get a true feeling, especially if you're coming from outside the area, until you've been living in that home for a period of time. And how important it is for an agent, like you said, hey, it's on a cul-de-sac, or it's not on a cul-de-sac. Are you going to have kids? Here's where the schools are at. Let's go see how far they're away, and how that's going to transact, and how important that is for that person. When they move in, they're satisfied. They're not having a buyer's remorse 12 months later.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I point out a lot just for that reason. Everything from one of my biggest pet peeves. This is just me, but nothing drives me more crazy than standing in a place and seeing three or more different kinds of floors.
Oh yeah.
So I'll point things like that out, and I'll always say this is my issue, but I do want you to see this because it probably is something that you might have to put money into.
I agree. It looks, obviously someone flipped out the floor in the living room because I thought it, but then it matches up to the kitchen, and the kitchen's a different flooring. It just doesn't, and that's not that might have been the style 15 years ago.
That's right.
It's not the style today.
Right.
100%. Yeah. No doubt. All right. So we talked about the people. Now, what do? You've been doing this 16 years. We've had, obviously, you worked your way through the collapse in 7, 8, 9, and 10. You had to learn how to do the short sales and all that stuff. Then we went on this kind of a road here, I think, for almost a decade. And then all of a sudden, we have this super high. And I wouldn't say we're at any sort of low, but everyone likes to think, because it wasn't last year.
Right.
It's still trucking along. People are just a little more bashful because of price point and rates, right? From that standpoint. But what do you do to keep yourself, polished when you're in front of customers? Are you a book reader? You listen to podcasts? Do you like to read industry journals? What do you to keep yourself, or do you just listen to Howard? What is the?
I mean, that's really a funny question. You know what? So I don't listen to podcasts. I mean, I listen to podcasts like Armchair Expert, just like things to make me laugh. I don't listen to industry things. I read things on Facebook sometimes, or Instagram, and I'll sometimes go to oh my gosh, Inman News, and I'll read that. But I don't read books. It stresses me out. Like, I've got
reading industry type stuff. Everyone's thoughts.
Right. And like when you get the Florida magazine, Realtor magazine, and reading what you could be doing, what you should be doing, it stresses me out. I'm doing okay, So to answer your question, what I'll do is I'll sometimes sit down with Howard, and we sort of have like okay, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Okay, you're not doing this. Why have you stopped doing this? It's time to kick it in again. So a perfect. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So Howard's kind of like your in-house coach.
Yeah, I would say he's sort of like my coach and mentor. I mean, it's really funny. He's younger than me, and we argue like brother and sister. But he gets me. He gets my craziness, how I get stressed, because he does the same.
Right.
I was going to say a perfect example is this January and February. It was really slow, after being crazy. And I'm like, what am I doing? What's going on? I have nothing going on. So I got on TikTok, which I've never been on TikTok before, right? My dad would get on TikTok during the pandemic when things were shut down, and he's like, you should watch this person or that dog or whatever. And there's a realtor in Atlanta, Georgia, who has really made a presence for herself on TikTok, and I was fascinated by it. And I'm like, I want to become the Jacksonville version of her. So I started doing all these TikTok videos. Well, then it became I don't want to, I do the videos, like I'm going to do them today when I leave you. I do probably 10 or 12, but it's a process to post them and do it. And so, again, business started to pick up. And so the marketing person I use, she is not able to post things on TikTok for me. She can only do on all the other social. So I stopped posting to TikTok, but they're going to all my other social media sort of places. But that's a perfect example of my sometimes lack of follow through.
Right.
Like, I should still be doing them on TikTok.
I think, I know in our business, I was sitting down and I've been here. Loan Depot's got a ton of technology. There's so many different ways that you can do the business here. it almost is. It's overwhelming,
right?
And there's all these gadgets out there. You guys are being bombarded by, as the technology changes, somebody creating a new app to do this and do that, and that you can get lost in all that stuff,
right?
But since you brought up the social media, I have noticed you obviously, unless it's just because I'm now following you, I have your regular video where you're kind of sitting there at the table and bringing up whatever subject you can. And the importance, I'm sure, obviously, as you've read, it's just consistency.
Right. And that's what I'm doing. And so I'm doing them pretty consistently. Originally, I was trying to post them 3 times a week. Now maybe at least twice a week. It just sort of depends upon what I have in me.
Right.
And topics, you know, I mean, so, but I love doing them. It's so fun. I joke around saying if real estate doesn't work out, I'm going to become the next Oprah.
Yeah. That's what I tell, I see a lot of people posting the generic ads, right? Wherever there's sources for that. And they tell you flat out, the social media people, those ads really don't get you anything. You have got to put yourself in. If you're showing a house, put yourself at the beginning of the video and then show the house.
Right.
Or show yourself somewhere in there. They want to see you.
Right.
And the reality is, and I've mentioned this many times before, I mean, since I've been doing the podcast, 14 months now, I've gotten more from my circle of influence because they're constantly seeing me on there.
Right.
And they don't care what you look like. They don't care if you stutter. They know you. They love you already. So it's not you, but you got to stay on top. If you stayed on top of your influence, your circle of influence, enough, you will actually get enough, to stay alive in the business. Then you go out and get what is bonus, what you can get out outside of that. And consistency on the social media, and just do it. I mean, the reality is people as in the pros say, people want to see the real you.
Right. But I will say, Robert Adams, a dear friend of mine who's also a realtor here in town, we used to joke around. I'm like, it's so much easier for you to do that. You can leave the gym and do a social media post, right? Yeah. If I'm leaving the gym and my hair is tied up and I am sweaty, I mean, there's a little bit of vanity there.
There's some people that could play that role as others can't. Yeah, I'm with you.
So I feel like, I hate to say it's a man versus a woman thing, but I'm not going to be as comfortable doing something if I have not put makeup on that day, or if I don't really care what I'm wearing. But so I think it's an interesting. In fact, you mentioned technology. So I ordered a gimbal. Right. You know what a gimbal is? So you hold your phone.
So the phone is always, you always look. You can walk with it, and it doesn't.
Right. I ordered it back in the end of May. You know how many times I've used it?
You haven't.
None. Because it's like I ordered it because I thought it was the greatest thing, and I do all these videos. But the reality is I gotta work with what I have that I'm good at. I like to dive deep with what I know.
There is a little bit of a setup. I'll shoot little videos, but it takes a few seconds to set up. And a lot of people have asked me, "Do you rehearse it?" I was like, "No." I said, oftentimes, I know I have to shoot a video, and I'll get in the phone set up, and I've got the little remote where I can shut off the video. And so if you see me reaching, it's because I misplaced it. But I've got the remote, and oftentimes I'll just think of the subject while I'm putting the phone. What am I going to talk about? So I'm putting that through my head, and then I go, try to do like 60 seconds or 90 seconds if I get a little long-winded, and it's just a topic. But the real point of it is, it's not like someone's doing research with your video. The point is you're on the screen.
Right. That's true.
And that is what it's all. That's what, when people really break it down, why are you doing so, is to remind people that I do mortgages, you do real estate, friends and family, we're here, call us.
That's right. That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
The bottom of, the people get so caught up in what they're going to say. Say something really stupid to see if the person on the other end catches it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That's a good point.
I call it shock and awe.
That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah.
You mentioned, do I like to read? I don't think that this is where you're going, but I'm an avid reader. I am a voracious reader, but that's how I zen out. Yeah. I just read
novels.
Correct. Yeah. I read all the time. And I actually did that all through graduate school. Mm-hmm. People didn't understand how I did it, but that's how I just shut my mind down. I mean, I knock on wood, I had a very successful year last year, and I do it all myself. My assistant is the best, but I don't let her, I don't say I don't let her. She just shoots out emails and she keeps things organized for me. So I work a lot. I work nonstop. And so when I'm down, and that's reading. And I think that's one of the reasons I don't read real estate related books or leadership related books.
You need to shut it off.
That's right. Exactly.
You need to shut it off and let your mind go off on think about, even if it's really thinking about, you're reading the novel, you're entertaining yourself, but it's because you're reading it, you have to shut everything else off. It's got to be quiet. It's, you're in your little space and reading that's a very good point. Cause I think one of the things I talked about it with Billy Wagner the other day, as he gets up in the morning and he goes for a walk and 20 minutes of that, he might be listening to a podcast for 40 minutes, but he blocks 20 minutes of that morning thing of nothing. Let his mind catch up, reset his day and that sort of thing. And that's the kind of thoughts. And that's probably what the book does for you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, you brought up your assistant. You did extremely high volume. How are you doing it? How do you? Because I think one of the challenges a lot of agents have of going from so many deals to 50, 60 deals. They need to actually let someone else do some of the other things.
Right.
How did you make that break? What are the things that you assign your assistant to do, and you count on them to do it? You don't. I think some people think they have to look over someone's shoulder, make sure they're doing. Right. You have to hire that right person that when you're out showing that house that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. Well, it's my mom, first of all. So
that's right.
I can have a conversation with her, and I can yell at her, and she can yell at me. Again, she's a New Yorker, so we can have words with each other where I probably couldn't with another person who I didn't know. So I can get things done. The other thing is she's my mom. My mom works 7 days a week for me. So if I have showings on Saturdays, she's sending out feedback requests on Sundays. Okay, so any other assistant works Monday through Friday, right? If I am, and she's in California, so she's 3 hours behind. So if it's, let's just say it's 9 o'clock at night here, and I had a 6 p.m. showing a 6 p.m. showing, I'll call her sometimes, say, hey, can you send out a feedback request? Or first thing tomorrow morning, and I'm calling her late at night, our time, saying, can you make this call? So, we definitely have. First and foremost, she keeps me organized. She comes to my house and she gets very frustrated because she thinks that in my mind, it's organized chaos. But she has highlighters and Post-it notes. I mean, and you can only imagine what her Tupperware cabinet looks like. I mean, she is very, very organized in all aspects of her life. My dad respects it, so it works well for them. But
she grew up in the age of the Tupperware parties.
Right, that's right. But she has her definitive duties, I guess you can say. And there are things that I wish she could do for me. Like, for example, she can write amendments for me, but I'm not at the point where we haven't gotten to the point where I can say, hey, I'm out showing a house, but I need you to write a contract for me. She could do it, but she'd want me to be on the phone with her, talking her through each thing. And I'm like, no. So a lot of what she does is just the computer work, organizing things, the touches to my past clients. She sends out all my anniversary cards, my birthday cards. She does all that.
Well, I mean, when you think, I had a friend of mine, agent. He's with EXP, and he was very happy when he got that virtual assistant that picked up on a lot of those things that you just mentioned. And you are at a road of mediocrity unless you are doing a lot of the past client things.
Right.
If you're not tapping into that past clients, you're missing out on those clients that are going to start pushing you.
Right.
Start compounding your units monthly and over the course of the year. And if there's any one thing I think in an agent who's trying to do it all themselves that they probably lack on is continuing touching their past clients.
That's right. Right. I love what I'm doing. So I will be with friends and we'll be sitting on the beach and my phone will ring and they're like, God, just give it a rest. Or if I'm on vacation but the thing about it, it's no sweat off my back. I love what I do. Yeah. I thrive on it. I get.
Have you always had that? Is that something? And I mean, I think a lot of agents, not everyone, but one person said they've never thought of quitting. But I mean, there's times where it's kind of driven you to a point of like, I'm going to give up on it. Have you ever had that thought any time in the 17 years now?
No, I haven't. I mean, no, I'm getting older. I'm a newly empty nester, and my husband is also self-employed. He has his own CPA practice. So, we start talking about the future and how we can both slow down and retire. I'm like, I'm never going to not do this. I'm never going to not do this.
Well, you literally could. You may not do the volume.
Right.
You may cut that or start handing off some stuff.
And that's where I have to then, I don't have an ego. Like, I am who I am. Yeah. Like, what you see is what you get. But when it comes to my ambition and my success, the only person I'm competitive with is myself. And so to bring it down, I'm going to have a real, heart to heart with myself and be able to be like, okay, it's okay that you're doing this, because instead of working all this, you're, going to Yellowstone, which is what you want to do, or something like that.
Would you agree? I think you would agree based on what you just said. And to the agents that are out there, whether you're a real estate agent, you're a loan, it doesn't matter what level of business you're actually in. If you want to move forward, the only obstacle in your way is your inability to grow yourself.
That's right.
It's like playing golf. You are playing against yourself every time. Your mindset, are you personally growing? Are you learning? And if you're not doing that.
Right. Absolutely. Now, I will say, I also tell, if I'm talking to a new agent, and this is one of the reasons why I think I was fortunate and was successful early on, is because I had my family had another income coming in. So it made it easier for me to spend money. But the only way to make money is that you have to spend money. You have to get leads from somewhere when you're first starting out. Yes, you can sit open houses, you can do those kinds of things, but you can't wait for the business to come to you. You're going to have to go after it. So if you're not going to spend money for leads, you need to pound the pavement like never before to get the leads and work them. So
back in 2006, you go from being an assistant to got your license and you're out there. Were lead buys a thing at that time, or what were some of the things you did to of course you had your husband's income, like you said, coming in, so you didn't feel like, hey, I better sell a house right now or I'm not going to eat next month. What were some of those grassroots things that you did?
So, again, I had a business partner, and she had been doing this already for I don't know how many years, and we sort of had a niche community within the Jewish community, and we made our presence known at events. We attended events. We put an ad in the Jewish News. And then I would say probably, so I've been doing this 16 years, so maybe 14 years ago, she calls me and she says, hey, I'm at this convention thing, and there's this thing called Zillow. What do you think about us buying a zip code? And so we invested in Zillow. So I've been with Zillow for so long, and the more now you have to spend more and you get a whole heck of a lot less.
Yeah.
I mean, it's painful, but I've been buying leads from Zillow for 14 years.
Right.
And I wish that Zillow would reward me for that, but they don't.
I've heard this. Because you're grandfathered in, you don't pay. How does that work?
I don't think there's anything.
Yeah, you're paying. If I called Zillow
That's
today,
right.
You're
there's
paying
nothing. I get nothing special.
Yeah,
I get nothing special, and I used to be the biggest proponent of their customer service in the very beginning. Like if I got a call from another company, let's just say Realtor.com, I would be the first person to say, you guys need to do things like Zillow. They're so on top of it. They're calling me. But it's like anything else that's gotten too big. Yeah. It's just kind of gone by the wayside. Yeah. So
when the operators or the initial intent, they've moved on or sold it off or whatever, they get too far away from where the actual rubber meets the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
From that standpoint. You mentioned the Jewish community. How important is it for an agent? And I've seen some other agents, they've taken over their subdivision. They're Austin with EXP, Preek, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, like he does his Beacon Lakes. He talks about shooting the video. Hey, this is what's going on this month at Beacon Lakes, and he says he'll be walking his dog, and people will say, "Hey, Austin," and he doesn't even know who they are.
Yeah.
How important is it to really focus on a group and put that information out and become an expert in that, whether it's a Jewish community or a subdivision or whatever?
Well, you know what? So the Jewish community was easy for me because it's my family. Mm-hmm. Like For me, without that Jewish community, I would not have had a life here when I first moved here. So I was just showing up and supporting things just because it was a mutually beneficial experience, right? But I'll get phone calls, I'll also give my time. So if I get a phone call from one of the synagogues and they're hiring somebody new and they're like, hey, we have 3 candidates coming in. We want them to have a tour of the community. I don't know if they're going to buy. I don't know if they're going to move here. I don't know what they're going to do. Will you do it? Absolutely. So it's sort of a give and take.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny you should bring up a neighborhood because I've never been one to farm a neighborhood. However, I live in a smaller subdivision that's newer. And I send out postcards every month. I've sold a whole bunch of houses in there recently. Sort of like what I do also. This comes down to time, and I should do more, but I don't have that much time. But we have a neighborhood Facebook page. Whenever somebody asks for a referral, I'll always make a comment. Well, I always refer my clients to blah, 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 blah. And I think
it lets them know that you're an agent.
That's right.
And you have experience of referring people out, and you've used these people before.
Right, that's right.
But you're an agent.
That's right. That's right. So I think it's paying off. But I think one has to find their niche, whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. There's a woman in our office who started off not that long ago doing this, and she got really involved with the Rotary Club down in the World Golf Village area, and I think that's really paid off for her. Another woman, one of my close friends, her sort of niche community became her gym. So big or small, you just have to do something.
Well, the story is Ryan Serhant joined like 3 or 4 gyms just to run into people.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Huh. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I read both those books. I remember it vaguely in there, but someone brought it up the other day. I was like, hey, you didn't mention that in one of his books. There, yeah, that's the, the people before property. I know, with Slate Realty down the street, he's big on his agents being involved in different communities.
Right.
Because he's teaching you that you've got to become part of the thread.
That's right.
Of what's around you. And
right.
You can't sit on the outside and not be involved in things. People got to know and see you.
Right. Right.
And when they know, like, and trust you,
right,
then they're ready to do business with you. And it could be the postcard every month that they're getting, and know that you live in the community, and just say, well, I've never met her, but I know she lives in the community, so she must be the best person to sell my home.
Right. And I also think, again, this is for newer agents, and maybe this is because I'm from Los Angeles and I'm used to driving, but a lot of realtors just hone in on one area. I work from Palm Coast up to Fernandina. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, I don't know very much about Palm Coast or Fernandina, and I will tell my clients that, and I will find out the information. But in a given day, it doesn't happen often, thank goodness. But I could start off my day in St. Augustine, go to Orange Park, back to Mandarin, and end up in Atlantic Beach. Mm-hmm. I don't mind driving. Right. And not everybody's like that.
Right.
A lot of
what do you like to? So you're probably, do you engage yourself? What are you doing while you're driving?
Trying to get as much business done as I can on the phone while I'm driving. Much to everyone's chagrin, because they're like, you shouldn't be doing this while you're driving. But I try to do as much as I can.
You feel you always have someone you can call and say hi to and try to knock some of those out?
Right. Or I'll be on the phone with my mom and we're kind of going through what needs to be done. Right. Or I'm just listening to my entertainment podcast just to zone out also, you know?
Right.
But I do like to try to get as much done as I can in the car on my way. It's interesting. So, and I'm actually going to do I think a TikTok about this, but so one of the benefits of COVID for me was I was one of these people, I always brought people in my car. Some realtors don't ever bring people in their car, but I always drove in my car. It's just much easier when you're touring around a neighborhood. You can point things out to them. Mm-hmm. I'm very chatty.
You're having that conversation and building.
That's right. Yeah. Well, now with COVID, I sort of stopped putting people in my car, and so now I get work done in between things. So I'm getting more accomplished. So, it just depends upon, again, you need to know your audience.
That brings up an actually interesting thing, though. I mean, when you are driving around the car, a lot of times you can get off on conversations and actually learn a lot about somebody.
Right. That's right.
Because they're comfortable in your car.
That's right.
And you just something's brought up, something's said, and then you start talking.
Right. And that's how I know if I had a good day or not. Is because, sometimes you're on 24, the whole time you're in the car. Mm-hmm. And if it's just a conversation like this where it goes and it flows and it's easy, awesome. But if I go home and I have a headache, I'm like, that was a hard day. and that doesn't happen so often because I could talk to a wall and make it okay. But
and how many times in that conversation, leaving that house that they end up buying, they're talking about it. The husband and wife, they're having that conversation in front of you. Mm-hmm. You intercede when you need to intercede, or say, yep, that's right, or answer their question right there. And by the time you get back to their car, they're like, let's write the contract.
That's right. Remember, I have a master's in social work. I did learn something about counseling, and so while I'm driving with partners in a car, and they're going back and forth and arguing about this or that or other, I'm sort of working to bring peace to it all. So that way, when we get back to their car, they have the foresight to decide: is this the right house for me, or do we need to continue looking?
Right. And based on how that conversation is going, you say, if they're arguing, then it's probably not the right, because someone doesn't like it. But if they're back and forth trying to convince each other, what oftentimes happens. All right, we're gonna go on our downward. I wouldn't say downhill, but kind of come in for that landing with Air Force One here. How important to you is the educational piece? Obviously, in 16, 17 years, the contracts are different. You had to learn how to do short sales and that sort of thing. Today, you have, you could probably, talk about the contract without even being in front of you. And what paragraph or something that something might be talking about, whatever, because you've done so many of them. But with the market conditions and things changing, obviously last year getting 20, 30 offers on a home. Now we're still getting multiple offers, but, the house might sit for, why is that house sitting? You're having those kind of conversations. I price it right. How important is to educate yourselves in many ways? Obviously, whether it's sitting with Howard, or like you said, you could like to come in the office, or just going down to NEFAR and getting a class, or a class that might be sponsored by a loan company or something like that, where you have a guest speaker coming in and educating you on some piece of real estate.
So the day I stop learning is the day I'm done in this business. So education is by far the most important thing, I think, in order to get ahead. Now, the kind of education for me personally, I much prefer learning from Howard, having workshops in our office. I don't have the patience, to be honest, to go to NEFAR, where people ask silly questions over and over and over again. I just don't have the patience for that. I've never had the patience for it, so I just choose not to do that. But I think education is essential. Right.
So, a new agent out there that just getting started, wherever they're broker, the broker offers. I think I always say, I tell everyone says they went to their broker because of the education, whether it's Keller Williams or Caldwell or whatever. It's they have the great education. Okay, well, let's agree that they all offer the education piece. We know some are better than others, obviously, because you could see the agents coming out, and why agents move from one place or another, because maybe they run the education line out or the leadership line out, so they go to another brokerage and get some new information. But for a new agent that go down to NEFAR, or if they're sponsoring something at Landmark educational wise, you've got to put that into your weekly schedule.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I did last week. Howard was in that Breakfast of Champions. And, there's a lot of networking events that bring realtors together in the town. I'm not a big fan of the networking events, but I am a fan of the educational events. So if I can go and sit and listen and learn something, and if I could take away one thing, it was worth it. You mentioned the contract. I don't know the contract inside and out. In fact, I was with another real estate company for 10 years before I moved to Round Table Realty. I thought I knew it all. I knew nothing until I came over here.
Yeah. I assume you're with Howard. You must know the contract.
Know. Now I know. Is
that a requirement to work here around Table?
But I call Howard. I'll call him at 11 o'clock at night and say, okay, talk me through the inspection part of the contract again. Even though I know it, I need you to we need to, go back and forth. So yeah.
Well, he's your built-in library plug-in.
Yeah, for sure.
He's on the speed dial. We mentioned consistency earlier because we were talking about social media. But what are some other things that you've done over the years? And maybe you mentioned there's some certain times where you've fallen off,
right? And
realized that it affected your business and you needed to get right back on. Like reaching out to past clients. What are a couple of things that you do and have done consistently that you've seen the fruits come from you?
I think it's more not so much a consistency in terms of reaching out, but it's a consistency of who I am. I'm consistently honest with my clients. I'm consistently, I don't cover things up. Like I lay it out on the line for them. I mean, I think so.
When you were talking earlier about asking the questions,
Yeah.
When you start doing a lot of volume, a lot of people are like, oh, just after, let's get the next one, right?
No.
And they forget the one that's right in front of them. And I think what you're trying to say to me is, I do the whole role with every single person.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your consistency.
That's my consistency. Yeah. From day 1 to day 30 or day 45 with closing, whatever. I'm there the whole way with my people.
Right.
And afterwards. I mean, let's face it. Social media and Facebook makes it much easier staying in touch with people. Because, if you comment on there, like one of my clients we closed, it was quite a process. We finally got them in their house last week. She posted on Facebook last night, if anybody needs some moving boxes, let me know, I have them. And I commented, this is the best post I've seen all day. You know what I mean? So just sort of that interaction.
Yes, that you're watching and seeing them. And
that's right.
Yeah. You're touching them.
That's right.
In a way.
And staying in touch with people when they have babies and birthdays and weddings and anniversaries and kids getting married. All that kind of stuff is, I think, important too.
Well, that actually goes to one of the, because I'm going down the common themes here, and that's showing up. And not necessarily physically, but like you said, responding to someone on Facebook, that's showing up. That's being present.
Yep.
You're reading and responding to them in a meaningful way.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
My husband gets upset with me. Not so much anymore, but in the beginning, he'd be like, we don't need any more friends. Because I would just bring everybody in my house. You don't know anybody. You can just come to me. Yeah. You need to put somebody on your kid's emergency contact. I'm happy to be that person.
I'm with you.
I put myself in their shoes. Remember, I was a transplant here 17 years ago. I made a move. So I know what all of this like. So.
Your circle, obviously Howard's in your circle, but surrounding yourself by high-level people in this industry. What it could be a lending point, it could be just real estate agents, but how important is to be interacting, or when you go to you went networked at Landmark a week and a half ago, to say hi to some of these people and keep these people close by, because things are going on in the marketplace, and they're high producers too, and they see what's going on, to reach out or just have a relationship of collaboration with them.
So I think that's a really interesting question, because I don't necessarily need to reach out, but it's the way you treat people. So for example, there's some high producing realtors that I have no problem picking up the phone and calling them and asking them for advice. Hey, you have a listing out at the beach.
Right.
I have not had a listing like this. I'm getting one. Give me some guidance. Because if you treat people the way you want to be treated, they're going to help you. If you are courteous and professional throughout the transaction, when you need to ask them for help for something, they will be there. So for me, that's more important. I surround myself with successful people, but I don't define success in terms of volume. I define success, like I have a couple of mortgage people that I work with, and most of them are women also. But it's also people that help, that we build there's a group of us. There's let me think. There's 2 of us that are realtors, 1 a mortgage person, 1 is and 2 of them are marketing directors for 2 different companies, and the 5 of us are pretty close. I'm the oldest, by the way. I'm getting old, but they're all young and they have little kids and whatever. But anyway, we get together and it's so fun, because we just we can sit and we can yammer and we can talk, but we build each other up, and it's just, to me, that is a definition of success.
Obviously, you're always probably talking about the industry in one way, shape, or form or another, and somebody's inputting, here's a way to spin that.
Right.
Here, hey, I run into this. I don't know which way I go. This is what I did, and it was successful.
Right.
And you keep your energy
That's
level going, and like you said, to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody. Well, maybe you don't see them for 6 months. Maybe you haven't talked to them in 6 months or whatever. But they know who you are, and you've the door is always open, and you can pick it up and say, hey, what's going on? Okay. What's the biggest mistake you've made in almost 17 years?
I've made a lot of mistakes. I would say the biggest mistake that I can think of is, this is going back many, many years ago. I had clients buying a pretty expensive home in Marsh Landing, and she's like, well, should we do a walkthrough? And I'm like, that's your call. I don't really know that it's necessary. A final walkthrough. And then we closed, and when she went back to the house, the sellers, I was new in the business. I want to just preface that. The sellers...
we fail forward.
Yeah, the sellers, when they were moving out, they had scratched their stone marble floors.
Oh.
And had we done the walkthrough,
right,
we would have. So it cost me. I mean, that's the other thing. When I make a mistake, I will own it, and I will do what I have to do to
they
remedy
could have
it.
gone back. I'm sure the movers was the one who did it.
That's right.
And they could have gone back after them and got that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I've never forgotten that, and still to this day, when I see this person, it's embarrassing because I would never not do it now.
Yeah.
So I would say that was probably my biggest mistake. It was my
that's a good
best
story.
learning experience
Yeah,
too.
huge learning experience there. All right, real quickly, you had a new agent coming in. Maybe they're talking to Howard or whatever. Howard said, hey, will you talk to this person? What are 3 things that you think are important for a new agent today coming in the business that they need to know?
Well, I think I've said most of these, but I would say treat people nicely, or with professionally and with courtesy.
Be consistent in your, and be thorough in your.
Right.
How do we want to call it? Because you're thorough. You're consistently having conversation. That initial conversation, have that with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that. Like I said, be prepared to spend money. You have to spend money to make money, and be open to learning at all times, at all avenues.
You can't. I think the open for learning obviously is out there, and people don't realize it. They tend to think learning only happens in the classroom.
Right. No.
Learning happened on that transaction.
Sure.
For someone you may be mentoring, you hear that story.
Yeah.
They're going to do a walkthrough on every.
I hope so. I mean, and I love nothing more than when newer realtors in our office ask me if they can join me when I go on a listing presentation. I mean, it's flattering to me, and they can't believe sometimes when I say, yeah, of course, I want to see you be as successful as you can. So come. And by the way, let's talk about it after. Let me hear what you learned, and let's hear what questions that you have.
How did you feel when you were actually talking or doing something? How did you feel as another person? Did you like what you were doing? Did you say something? Because we may say some stuff 9 out of 10 times, everyone's just taking it in. That one time because we're New Yorkers, we said something that, raised the hair on the back of their neck.
Right.
To get that feedback that,
right.
Hey, when you said this or you made this gesture, that didn't go well with me.
Right. Right.
We want that feedback.
Right. Exactly. It's really helpful. So it's a two-way street.
A new agent coming in, don't think, now I know there's a lot of structure and some teams and so forth, and you come in there's others like, hey, you hang your license here, and hey, we're having some classes when there are, and you just assume when there's not a class or something that you're told to go to, that you're sitting at home and, whatever you're doing. The realization is you should immediately, and I think you'll agree with us, to find someone like Erica to say, hey, I know you're top agent in the office. When you're going out on your next showing or listing appointment, can I tag along? Right.
I mean, Howard does that, and that's a great yes. And or just go and be in the office, because you'll hear things around you, discussions. A lot of times, to Howard's credit, when there's a new agent in the office, if I call him with a question, he'll put me on the speakerphone so they can hear what's going on and they can learn from it.
Awesome power.
But there's so much conversation that could go on that you can just pick up bits and pieces. Real estate is not easy to do. You have to put in the work. You have to put in the effort.
It's one of those things where my career, my first 12 years was in the call center between Quicken Loans and a couple of years at Loan Depot's call center. High volume. I did a lot of loans. So when I come out into retail, it doesn't move as fast out here as a sense of the volume. Real estate's that same thing. You're only doing so many transactions a year that you don't know everything.
Right.
And to hear the story about the scratch in the floor is priceless.
Right.
And to hear everyone else's horror story is priceless, so you don't do it.
Right. That's
or
right.
You do it because if it's a good thing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that works. And you got to show up. You got to be in the office, and then obviously have someone like Howard that thinks, oh, hey, you should hear this question, so you don't have to ask.
That's
it.
right.
When you've been in the business 17 years, you're not going to ask that question.
Well, we'll see. I don't know.
All right, 2-minute warning here. We're going to wind down. What is your favorite thing, or you and your husband's favorite thing to do here in Northeast Florida? Because I always like to talk about Florida lifestyle. I do my little video on Sunday when I'm boating. But what in the lifestyle of Northeast Florida, what do you like to do?
That's an interesting question. So We have a condo down in on Anastasia Island.
Okay.
So we like to go down there on the weekends.
Escape?
Yeah, and just escape and just chill out at the beach and do nothing. I mean, that's probably, I would say the
Marissa
biggest.
Scott's got one. I think it's Amelia Island, if I'm not mistaken. She does the same thing.
Oh yeah, it's just nice. But honestly, I just like to be at home. I don't like to cook. I don't like any. I just like to be at home and chill and just do nothing. I'm going all the time.
Go and relax, dress, put whatever you want to watch on the TV.
That's right.
Whatever it may be, or just kick back.
That's right.
It's kind of, when we're in Florida, you kind of miss that a lot of times, because up north, you remember, like in New York, when it snowed, you couldn't go anywhere anyway,
Right.
so you were forced to do that. We're not necessarily forced to do that here.
Right,
We
which
have
is
to force
interesting.
ourselves.
Is one of the things I liked when the world kind of shut down because of COVID, because we were forced to stay at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it more important who you know or what you know and why?
Ooh.
Last question.
Who you know or what you know. I think it just depends upon what outcome you're looking for. I mean, who you know can help you. Like, it helped me. It was all about who I knew that got me my job at USC and got me my job at the Reagan Library.
Right. They taught you how to, raise the money, or what to say.
Well,
and
but
I mean,
more
you
than
kinda
that, but it was because I knew somebody that I got the job.
Yeah.
I mean, she sought me out.
Right.
What you know, I think what you know is important, but I think how you disperse the information is more important.
Oh, that's interesting. Express on that.
Well, you don't want to be a know-it-all. And I think it's
Right.
important to, again, it's essential to listen to what others have to say.
Yeah. I know the number one complaint was to hang out a lot at the St. John's board, and you'd have those agents that come from wherever, and they're sort of retired. They're not actually really doing it, but they go to the classes at the board or whatever, and then they want to tell the instructor.
Right. And that's why I don't go to these classes. Just right there. The questions and the know-it-alls.
Yes.
No, thank you.
100%. Erica, I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. This is fun. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I appreciate you. And you're just downstairs. Erica's online. She's got all the social media. Reach out to her. I'm sure she'd field any questions or anything. And new
Absolutely.
agents out there, or an agent, if you might be in the business for 5 years, but you just hit a lid. You're like, man, how can I? What is it? What do I need to do? What am I missing? I'm sure Erica would have that conversation.
I'd
with
be
you.
happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you.